Well, they say it's a hard conversation to start, but somebody has to do it. That's what Pastor Brian Jones discovered after years of avoiding the topic of hell.
When we hear the word hell, we all get a similar picture in our heads. Stalactites, lake of fire, a devil with horns, pitchfork, and a tail. We, as Christians, are faced with opportunities to talk about it with our friends. But so many of us choose not to because, well, maybe we just aren't sure if it's real. Author Brian Jones paints a vivid picture of why it's so important to talk to others about it, and how not to do it in such a creepy way.
Well, it's a book with an intriguing title, Hell is Real, but I hate to admit it. Brian Jones, why do you hate to admit that hell is real?
I like being liked just like anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be a Christian, be a follower of Christ, and start up a conversation where eventually you're going to bring it to the point where you can tell them the good news is there's bad news if you don't accept the good news.
Well, you were a pastor. You don't believe in hell. Well, why not? I mean, you literally did not believe that hell was real?
You know, I went to seminary. I was there for 3 years. I was passionate, excited about serving God. While in seminary, unfortunately, which is common, I lost my faith.
I hate to say, could you identify that place of learning? Where'd you go?
It was Princeton Theological Seminary.
Princeton.
Princeton, yeah.
As
yeah.
in New Jersey.
As in New Jersey.
My goodness.
Great place. There were some godly professors
Yeah.
there, but there are a few that take quite delight in undermining evangelical faith, and that's what happened to me over a 3-year period of time.
What did they tell you about hell? What did they say? It was just a, an illusion or some superstition or what?
They said it was something that the writers of the New Testament had made up, and that if there's a hell, we're living in it right now, that everybody's going to go to heaven.
Everybody, so it's sort of a universalist.
Absolutely. No
Everybody's
question
going
about
to
it.
say.
Absolutely, no question about it. Hell was something that the biblical writers borrowed from other cultures,
Yeah.
and nowhere is that really a truth that is sustained in Scripture.
But a righteous, loving God couldn't possibly send somebody to hell. I'm sure they taught you that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
He's
yeah.
a God of love.
Absolutely. He loves everybody, and we're all going to end up in the same place. And that's what I left seminary with, and I was a pastor for 4 years and never told anybody that I truly believed that.
What changed you? What brought you to some different conclusion?
You know, I once a month I try to go away on a prayer retreat, and I was at a monastery of all places as a Protestant pastor, and I was praying, and I felt that something was wrong. I felt that, God, can you reveal to me what's wrong with my spirit, my spiritual life? And I did something I never encourage Christians to do. I played Bible roulette. You know, you open the Bible, fan the pages of Scripture, and I kept putting my finger on passages about hell. I was like, okay, that was a coincidence. And I read the whole day the New Testament, underlining passages on hell. At the end of that experience, I felt an overwhelming sense of grief that I was a Christian, I was a pastor, supposedly teaching the Bible, and I truly didn't believe in hell. I got on my face, I repented before God, drove home, repented before my wife, my staff, my leadership team, and on Sunday morning in my church. And you know what was shocking about the whole experience?
What's that?
Someone on my leadership team came up to me and said, "Oh, thank goodness, I thought you were going to tell us you did something serious like had an affair." You know, that's most people that are watching you, even unfortunately most Christians think that, oh, well, how's that not that really big of a deal? Well, it is, you know. But the Apostle Paul tells us, watch your life and your doctrine closely. Persevere in those, because if you do, you'll save both yourself and your hearers.
In your study, what did you find hell to be?
Well, I found that, my gosh, Jesus talked a lot about hell.
Yeah.
I thought it was something that came up. There were a couple scriptures, and you can explain them away. It's everywhere. It's inescapable. Half of Jesus' parables are about eternal punishment and his judgment. And it was something that I couldn't avoid.
The thing about hell that strikes me that it's forever. You know, they'll be tormented forever. And you know, the thing of it is you can't die. You know, people think dying is bad, but dying isn't all that bad if you got something horrible happening to you.
Yeah, you know, theologians today call it eternal conscious torment, and the Bible teaches that. But the good news, Pat, is that we as Christians can help people avoid that. You know, if we are able to be God's hands and feet in a very loving, practical way, a tough message, even about hell, can be understood as something that's very loving if we're willing to invest in relationships with people.
Jonathan Edwards, that great sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, and he said his hand is holding you over the flames of hell. And people were so struck they were grabbing hold of the pillars of the church to keep from falling in. That's preaching, I'm telling you.
Absolutely. It's a fearful concept, you know, and someone once said you should never talk about hell with a tear in your eye, without a tear in your eye, and I believe that. And you know, the bad news is hell is real, and it's tough to admit it.
Well, what has that done to your ministry, your preaching, now that you've come to this realization? You talk about it, and what has it done?
Well, it's changed my life, changed my ministry. You know, when I was a pastor for 4 years, didn't believe in hell. I didn't lead anybody to Christ. You know, since then, after coming to this realization, we've started a church in the suburbs of Philadelphia. Church has grown to about 1,600. We've led almost 1,100 people to Christ, and
incredible.
It has really transformed the way I look at serving God. And that's my hope and prayer, that this grabs people. This is the wake-up call Christians are looking for, to understand passionately what is going to face people without Christ. If we truly understood that, we couldn't help but share our faith. We couldn't help but have it change our hearts.
Jesus would not really have had to die unless it was something horrible. He experienced the torment of being separated from God.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people, the church exists today to feed the poor and fix social causes. Absolutely, that's important. But Jesus didn't have to die on the cross to do that. The Old Testament had wonderful provisions for that to happen. The reason Jesus died on the cross is because God is both loving and just, and our sin is going to keep us from being with him for eternity. So he came and died on the cross.
Well, in this politically correct society, you're going against the grain, but boy, we need to go against the grain. It's time we do it.
Absolutely.
Wake people up. Yeah.
You know, because our friends, our family members, they need us to go against the grain.
Yeah.
They need us to do the unpopular thing, to cross the street, build a relationship, talk at the cubicle at work. They need us, because if we're in their situation, we would be hoping and praying that they would do the same for us. So.
Hell is real, ladies and gentlemen. Brian Jones, what an interesting testimony. And ladies and gentlemen, his book is available, and wherever books are sold, intriguing color, all black with a red arrow coming down the corner. Hell is real. Brian, thank you so much. God bless you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.